Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Developing the Leader Within podcast. Today, I have a special guest, and I'm so blessed to have him, Orlando Javien Jr. He's an author. He's a speaker. He wrote this great book here. We'll be discussing here in a moment. But I want to tell you that I'm thrilled to have you on the show as we discuss leadership and faith. It's something that normally is kind of shied away from, but I like to bring it up because it's been a huge part of my life, faith, and has been, if I can say, the most determining factor in my success as a leader. And so I'm happy to have you on the show, Orlando, and I just want to give the mic out over to you and start to listen. If you can give us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to and the things that you're doing.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you again for having me on your podcast. Just a little bit about me. I consider myself to be the man of many hats. I'm a family man, husband to my beautiful bride, Beth, father to 2 kids, Junior, Orlando III, and my daughter, Jenilyn. By trade, I'm a bookkeeper and tax preparer. My busy time right now. And the third hat that I wear is author, speaker. And I wrote 2 books. The first one that you showed, God Moments, and the other one is Unplugged. And they're stories about my faith journey, how God was able to turn a man's man, a worldly man, into a God's man. I also recently started creating videos and little audios for a podcast I have them titled God Moments. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Spotify and different venues like that.
Outstanding. That's so. I'm happy to hear that you are venturing out from your core job into your passion, right? Because a lot of people don't understand that their job could not be their passion. And so I'm so happy to hear that you are transitioning into that, or you have transitioned into that and you're making it part of your life. Undoubtedly, it will become your life, right? Your life mission, your passion to give in the area where you feel that it's not only meeting the needs of people, but also meeting the needs and satisfaction of the heart, which is what passion is. So
Yes.
I know that leadership in terms of faith usually kind of shies away from the subject because people don't want to bring up a few things, right? They don't bring up politics, they don't bring up religion. But I feel that in leadership, and I was, raised in the church. I grew up. I'm an ordained minister in the Church of God, and I have even married my own daughter this last September. So
That's amazing.
I've been blessed. I've been blessed. But leaders aren't. Let's just say they aren't transparent. They aren't vulnerable in the sense of their faith. And I'm one that could testify that had it not been, how we say, had it not been for the Lord that was on my side, a lot of things would have gone wrong because I led a life that was visually perfect, but internally was not. And so that's kind of like one of the things that we deal with and struggle with as leaders. So I want to get your perspective in terms of leadership from the ground up, right? From when we were, born and integrated into a family, and how you have seen that transition and leadership in those different stages, how you have seen that impact, or how you have impacted those different stages.
Sure. I'd love to. The funny thing is I never saw myself as a leader. I was content being a follower. Anytime we would be with a bunch of family members and they were talking about what should we do, I didn't want to give my input. I just said, whatever you want to do. And I was the same way in my marriage. My wife would ask me what I want to do. I'm like, what do you want to do? And I tended to relegate any type of leadership to her. It seemed like she knew how to do it better, so I allowed her to lead wherever it needed. And many times that was little issues in our marriage because she wanted me to lead, but because I was content just following, I wasn't being the man that she wanted to be. And it wasn't until I started my faith journey that I realized my role that I had to fill, and that was to be a leader in my house, to be a leader to my wife, a leader to my kids, and a leader in in the outside, whether it's in the secular world, in my faith community. And I've learned a lot, especially because I wasn't, or I never considered myself a born leader. I had to learn. I had to read a lot of books. I had to learn from other leaders on how to be a good leader.
Yeah, that's you bring up a great point, because there's I'll tell you that although I as a son, right, as a son, where I first started as a son, uh, I was delegated a lot of responsibility, but never really was told what that would result in.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a do as I say, because you're helping the household, right? You're helping me. Now I was mature enough to understand that if I didn't do this, my mom, the single mother, single parent home, my mom was undoubtedly going to have a harder time. I'm the eldest of 11. And so I knew that it was going to be hard if I didn't help, but I truly did not understand, nor was I given that understanding of that leadership role that I was asked to kind of take in the absence of a father. I didn't know what impact it had, and we do that as leaders in our day to day. We don't take the time to explain the impact of what we're doing, and so sometimes we just do it, just to do it.
Mm-hmm.
When you started out as a son, and you say you had the tendency of just say, yeah, whatever everybody's gonna do. Did you see times as a son where you had a leadership role, and maybe that's where maybe you developed the you guys got it?
If I did, if I can look back in my life and see the first time I was given a leadership role was being an older brother to my the youngest in the family. He's 8 years younger than me, so I have two older siblings, and so since I was at the time the youngest, I wasn't ever given the opportunity to lead because I was the youngest. But then when my brother came along and we were closest in age, I saw that as an opportunity to lead him. And I saw that it was important for me to set good examples for him.
Yeah, that good example, that desire as an older sibling, um, it's so real, because I felt that. And now I had 11 or 10 other younger ones, but uh, they were five immediate ones that I could touch, because the other ones are. So that's 11 from two households. So my dad, my mom. The five immediate were the ones that I grew up with. But nonetheless, the other household, they still viewed me as their oldest brother. And so it still translated to them, but that desire, that responsibility, that feeling of responsibility, I felt that. So I understand what you're saying, and it also drove me to uh, two things. One was that I felt the responsibility to make sure not to mess up, so that
Mhm.
they wouldn't have a cause, right, to say, well, look at him.
Yeah, yeah,
But but then I started thinking about it. That was kind of prideful, right? pride started taking so in my life, pride started taking a root, and so we got to be careful, right, and in leadership, to be doing it for the right reasons and not
Yes.
just for visuals, right? um,
Mhm.
so so we both, we grew up sons, and now we're adults, and and the choice to to marry comes up. And you have mentioned that that you were okay with allowing your wife to make decisions, and hey, I do that all the time, so I don't blame you.
Yes, yes, yes.
but and if you truly value your wife for all the good things that they bring to the marriage, it is good to give them some type of um, how you call that, ownership, right? Ownership
Yes.
on things, because we can't do it all.
Yeah.
And the first person, a leader or a husband that think they can do it already failed. So so I like how you have mentioned that you recognize, you saw some things that she could do better, and I do like that. And I do like the fact that you got to the point where you say, "Oh man, through this faith thing, oh, maybe I was not going up to bat like I should have." How did you start implementing some of those things?
I think by reading the Word of God and realizing what the role of leadership entailed, I started, little by little practicing the roles and seeing where they worked and they didn't work. I learned at most that the example that I led was going to be the best way to lead, because you could tell somebody to do it, but until you show them the way, um, it's just lip service. I remember when I first started leading the family in prayer, and my kids were probably 2 and 4 years old, and I'm expecting them to be on their knees and sit still while we pray and I read them the Bible. But my daughter, she's real antsy, and she's jumping up and down, and because that's what kids do. And I spanked her, and my wife looked at me and said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that to your little girl?" And for me, I'm thinking, well, because she's disrespecting our prayer time. But I came to realize that if I show her, my anger, while we're supposed to be focusing on the Word of God, do you think she's going to love God? Do you think she's going to want to know God's Word if it makes Dad angry? And it was my wife pulling me aside and correcting me. And I realized, oh, I get it now. But it was because I didn't know how to lead. It was through corrections from my wife, and then me going out and learning, well, how should I lead my family in prayer? And I realized that, if they can't sit down if they can't be on their knees, or if they can't stay awake, I can't fault them, because as a child and even as a grown adult, I had a difficult time. So it's learning where I was, and then at the same time, realizing the most important thing when I share the word is they need to feel the love. If they can't feel the love during prayer time, then it's just words.
Yeah,
So
that's wow, that's so powerful. You, as you're talking, in my head, it's going all these things that I'm looking at Moses when they ask him for water in the wilderness, and
mhm,
God said, "Hey, strike the rock," and then he goes a wailing at it in
mhm,
anger and says, "Here, there, I have given you water," right? And just the uh the the time where Christ is like, "Hey, if you're not like a child, you don't come to me as a child, then you don't got no place here." And
yes.
and
Mhm,
so and me and my wife have been discussing this here lately, which is, what we have learned as parents has been all wrong. It's kind of like the post I made on LinkedIn a couple of a week ago or so, where uh, leadership starts at the home. It starts at the home, and so I love your the fact that not only were you learning, but you allowed the correction to come from the one that loves you the most, which is your spouse, and that dynamic is just sweet to me. And so, what other things have you seen in your growing with your family and your kids, and the terms of leadership um, have you seen?
I think my excitement to go to mass, um, that has to be my example from my kids. If I wake them up in the morning and says we have to go to mass, we have to go to church. If I'm not excited about it, they're not going to be excited either. So in our early stages of going to church, I showed an eagerness, and my kids were still young at the time. And one of the things my wife and I always had an issue with getting ready for church was we would always be late. And I grew up, my dad being in the military, I grew up as on the wrestling team. And what I always learned was you need to be early. When you're early, you're on time. When you're on time, you're already late. And so when we were always late for church, my wife and I, we would get in a fight right before church. And it was because the kids weren't ready and she wasn't ready. And so what I made it important to make sure that I took out any way for us not to make it early. And so I would get the kids ready so she could focus on getting ready. And then when I started volunteering at church, it made it even more important to get there early because I had to be there to greet at the door. And my kids joined choir, so we needed to be early for them. So by showing the eagerness to volunteer at church, to be there early and have them involved, started bringing the family. Church became something there's a bit more excitement rather versus it's something we do. It's just I didn't want it to be just something we checked off on our things to do, but something we looked forward to.
Yeah, you talk and my head is going over here. The Yeah, so because in relations to leaders and how we treat a mission, right? A task, right? The task here was going to church, getting there in uh, and self-imposed rules is one of the hardest things to fight because I came from the military and I know on time you're late, right? You're early, you're on time you're late. It was preached to me many a time.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
started saying the same thing, but the self-imposed rules as a leader, whether you're in corporate or whether you're at home, is one of the things we have to check, right? Because um, are you really late when the time is not yours and you got there? Maybe you missed something, right? And I always go back to 9/11, as horrific as it was. There were people who are still alive today because they were late. And so is it really, is it really a lateness thing, or is this self-imposed rules that now we kind of uh, enslave ourselves to, although with the greatest intention, right? Because I would love to go and be somewhere. um, Hey, we did it today, right? We were together earlier than the actual call, and those are just things that make fears go away, right? The
Yeah.
anxieties go away, so that you can enjoy what you're doing. And I'm all for preparation. It's the self-imposed rules that kind of bring a challenge, and then the joy that you get after everything's all running the way you feel that should be going, right? The
Mm-hmm.
excitement of now that church didn't become a task and now it's actually an exciting thing to be part of. And leaders need to understand that as well. When you go back to the office and you bring these rules with you that maybe work for you, maybe don't work for your team. And so you have to be careful. But when you get past all the rules and all the things, and then now your team is excited to be at the office, because I've had both. I've had dread to be at the office, and I've had excitement to be at the office. And the only difference there was the leader.
Yeah.
Right. You're making these changes and adjustments as they're coming up. And so what did so you say excitement, what else resulted from that?
Well, I think because I volunteered so much, my
Mm.
saw that volunteering was important, and they're both in choir. They both are on the hospitality team, and even when we're at mass and they're not doing either or, they'll help me usher or greet. I think I've kind of showed them that church is more exciting when you're involved versus just sitting in a seat, taking up space and just listening. But when you're involved and you're involved with the community, you're involved greeting the people, then you tend to stay awake more because you're alert and you're excited to receive something, not just sitting there and taking up space.
I love that. More exciting when you're involved,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot. It's amazing how giving gets you more.
Yes.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things that blows people's mind. It blows my mind every time. And as leaders, you have to invest in your people. You have to give. It's
Yeah.
not a receiving thing. It's not just say do this and let me check on you and make sure everything's done. It's more of a, hey, let me give you more, and then you be amazed how much you get back as a leader. And it doesn't matter what arena you're in. It's just a principle that's ingrained in what we do. And the amazing part is what comes back.
Amen.
It's a multiplier. So now you got this thing going. Now everything's going well. What in terms of a husband, because you mentioned a couple of instances where I really really appreciate you and your wife and the relationship you guys have now, is the accepting of her input. And so as a husband, it's one of those areas where a lot of leaders are well, men are challenged with it, right?
Yeah.
And there is an area for that input. You have to be cognizant of the timing of the input and the reason for the input. So
Mm-hmm.
how in terms of leadership and being a husband, how have you seen that evolve?
I think one of the main things I've learned in marriage and through the faith journey is learning how to listen. My wife has, on numerous occasions, told me that I don't listen. And I would always get frustrated when she would say that because I could typically repeat verbatim exactly what she said, all while watching football game or working. And um, through that process, I came to realize that listening involved more than just hearing with your ears. I learned that listening required listening with the heart. I remember this one time I came home from work and I just wanted to sit down on my lazy boy chair and just rest my feet. And my wife asked if I would do the dishes. And, I didn't want to do the dishes at all. And not only because I was tired, but it was also her turn. That's what I told her. I said, it's your turn. Next thing you know, she started slamming everything imaginable, the cabinets, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, anything that was slammable, she slammed. But you know what? I didn't do the dishes. And I came to didn't hear what she really meant, what she wanted my help. Yeah, she wanted me to do the dishes so I could help, but I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to rest. But nowadays, when she asked me to help out, I realized she's burdened just like I am. I'm burdened from work. I've got a lot, but she's burdened, taking care of the household, taking care of the kids. So I have to be able to hear her heart. It's not that she just doesn't want to do the dishes. She just says, "Honey, I need your help." And so it's learning to hear the heart outside of listening with the words. And so I'm more able to help out. I let go of that pride. I'm more not anxious, but willing to help because I she's overwhelmed.
So you mentioned listening. I just did a survey not too long ago as part of the second podcast that I do, and listening has come up so many times. And we had asked, 8 questions specific to leadership and what people thought that that leaders needed: listening, listening. And it was one of if it didn't scream out anymore, I mean, we would be deaf not to see it, and so, or hear it. But um, that is one of the challenges in relationships as a whole, being able to listen to understand and not listen to respond, as they say. It's critical at all levels, but especially at the marriage level, uh, because to my comment when we started, the leadership truly starts at the home.
Yes.
And if, as a husband, you cannot listen to understand the person that loves you the most,
Mm-hmm.
then what do you expect to do back at the job where there's 50 people that could care less about you? Right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they might tolerate you, but they can care less about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you expect them to listen and understand, right? So
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you were able to get that from your relationship at home, because you're able to do it after that. It's one of the challenges that I had for many years, and only through submission, humility, only through valuing who my wife was and is, was I able to get to the point where I'm listening to understand and help. Right now, thankfully, the dishes is the thing for everyone, right? So now, thankfully, what I do is I notice that she cooked. Now I'm a cook. I like to cook. That's one of my
Mm-hmm.
things. But when I'm not cooking and she cooks, I make it a point to make sure that she does not have to do the dishes. That as soon as she's done and we're done eating, I go right to it, because she can see me hearing her before she even had to say anything, right? So,
Yes, yes.
so that's something that I've been able to work up to. And so earlier you had mentioned reading and gaining knowledge. Are there any specifics to books or maybe things you would like to share with the audience of that maybe helped you out?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I got a couple. So one of the recent reads I had is titled "Be a Man" by Father Larry Richards, and this one really helps men realize their role, and their number one role is to lead their family to God. And if you're not leading them to God, then you're not living your role. You're not taking care of your family. You might be able to provide with money, but if you're not leading them to God, you're not leading your kids and your wife to be the saints God's calling us to be, then you're doing a disservice for your family. So that's one book. This is another one that I like, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book has definitely been one of my prized possessions, as it taught me how to uh, communicate with people. It's taught me how to learn to listen, with this and with this, and to then respond. And I think if one of the key things I've learned is how to um, talk to my kids. I realize that they're different. The way I talk to one kid and I discipline and lift up is going to be different with the way I discipline and lift up another child. And this book has really taught me how to understand people, and the words that you use are important. And this is one that I revisit every year, Fasting by Jensen Franklin. When I started my faith journey, I grabbed hold of some of his podcasts. This was in 2008. And for the past 12 years, I've been listening to him almost every day, at least 3 to 4 sermons. And one of the key things I've learned from him is the importance of fasting. It's important to pray, but it's important to fast, because through fasting, you're able to shut off the voice in your stomach. And if you can tame your stomach, you can turn off the voice in your head. And when you can do those two things, then you can really hear the voice of God and how he's leading, how he's directing, and how he's correcting.
Wow, those are three powerful books there, and one of them I'm familiar with, the John Maxwell. I followed John Maxwell since since 1991, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
when he was still a pastor in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you mentioned something that's very critical to a leader, being able to shut off some things in order to truly listen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the challenges that leadership has is not being able to do that,
Yeah.
not being able to focus on the real thing behind the conversation, and just going headlong with what they're hearing. And but they have their mind made up, so it doesn't matter really what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
They just, oh, that's nice, but this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's critical for leaders to not only educate themselves by reading. I have a bunch of books right here in front of me, which I have to go through myself, and but to educate yourself and start to mold the way you interact with people, because for a business, you're not a business if you have a product, and even if you don't have a product, if you don't have people participating in that, buying it, selling it, marketing it, distributing it, if you don't have people,
Mm-hmm.
your business is going nowhere. So
Yes.
the most important thing you think it would be on the leader's mind is how to interact with people, but it's
Yes.
the last thing they do.
Mm-hmm.
They just focus on the product. So um being a leader of groups and talking, right, you become an author, you speak. How has that really been a benefit to you, to all this thing that you're reading, and all the training, especially being able to shut some things off?
It's really helped me, first of all, in my household, um, because I'm able to not only live it in my household, but then I'm able to explain it. So whenever I'm doing any type of correcting, anytime I'm doing any disciplining in my household, I don't just yell. I've learned that. I'm human. I do yell, but I then take the time to explain. this is the reason why I'm correcting this. And I'm not saying that you're bad. I never attack the person. I attack the action. So I love up on my kids, but I said, but the action was wrong. So we need to correct the action. And that has really helped me. Being able to communicate with my kids and with my wife, I've been able to then parlay that into men's ministry. I've been asked to lead a men's group in my church, and we meet on a monthly basis when we were able to, before the lockdown. Right now we're just meeting via Zoom, but these communication skills have allowed me to communicate with them and not only gather the people, but inspire them, to seek God's word and to live the way we should with our families, to guide them.
So what I hear is a lot of love.
Yes.
A lot of
Mm-hmm.
love, and oftentimes leaders don't think, or they think that bringing love into the workplace is a no-no, but there is a place for love, and it's not the other kind of love that's romantic. It's the type of love that allows someone to be themselves, and you understand what they're saying, and you take the time to give them their value, and highlight their value so that they can become better. And so I love that leaders have the opportunity to bring that into the workplace and see people truly bloom, regardless of what's going on. So,
Yes.
no, I love this conversation and what a journey you have gone through to get you to the point where, now, and I love that you say, you're leading at home first. And I'm a true believer of leadership at home first before you branch out and try to lead others, because our true testament to our leadership is our family. And so
Yes.
I thank you so much for the time, the conversation, the opening up, allowing leaders to understand that we shouldn't cower away from our faith, because it truly is our backbone. It is my backbone.
Yes.
Thank you for God Moments, folks. If you have not venture to go and read this book, go ahead. It's available. I got mine through Amazon, and amazingly enough, in less than 24 hours, it was at my door. So, yeah, it was great. But look Orlando up. How can they reach you, Orlando?
I have my website, orlandojavier.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, and I have a lot of my videos that I create also on YouTube. I realize that the things you put on LinkedIn, people on YouTube don't see. You put it on YouTube, Instagram doesn't see. So you kind of have to throw it out into
Right.
all. So all of my content is in those different arenas.
Well, we'll make sure to put all those links on the post, and you folks, you can find it in the comments below. And thank you again, Orlando, for your time. God bless you, and
Thank you.
continue to richly enlarge your tent and your territory, and give our best to your family.
Thank you. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you.